Yeah, it was sometimes when you can, I don't know, pull something together in a more sort of coherent way for a subject, you sort of pull together lots of streams really to, yeah. And then there's obviously it was fairly intensively activated, so it wasn't like a normal conference and just come and listen to stuff or watch. It was sort of, well, we're going to do all these activations to help engage. So yeah, I think it was slightly more intensive.
I was telling Debbie that you'd be going through parts and be listening, and all of a sudden I say, did he just say that? He did say that. Can you rewind it? I want to hear that again.
Yeah, well, that's the advantage of live streaming. You can actually do that and just drag the thing back and listen to it again. I mean, most people obviously didn't listen to it live, but there's some did. Some people, they got up and actually followed it live. I mean, well, you didn't really need to do that. You could have just adapted it to your own times frame. We start at 10 o'clock. Well, you start at 10 o'clock in your own time, not 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Yeah, I was listening to it as well, but I was at my daughter's home. And so at night I had it on in the spare room. And so I was engaging with the angels, sounds of many water, because I want to hear God more, and that the fish tank in the room gurgling water all night. So I have a question though, because my daughter contacted me yesterday.
Are we live?
she's at with her wit's end because her children are having trouble sleeping, and my grandson Zach. I'm not sure if I activated something there or not, but he's seeing something in the doorway of the room I was staying in, and he's so he wouldn't sleep all Saturday night. He wouldn't sleep. He kept on that ghost or something, and then he was saying when he finally slept for an hour. And then when he came down the stairs, he says, see, it's right there at the front door. And so she's saying, is it something evil? Is it, what do I do? She said, I in Jesus' name, we told it to go. And then during the night, they were covering him with the blood of Jesus. And so I asked Jesus myself and what to do. And so I was declaring the scriptures from Proverbs, he gives us sweet sleep and he protects us and that. And then, so I just, I don't know what my authority is and what them as parents, their authority is. And also my granddaughter, she's having night terrors. Like she'll be screaming, they'll go in, her eyes are open, but she's not conscious.
Okay. Well, that does tend to indicate that it was not necessarily a good thing, because an angel to a child is not a frightening thing.
Okay.
Generally speaking, I mean, because they don't find it frightening. But if there's a general atmosphere of, well, someone's having night terrors and someone's seeing something which is frightening them, and I think it's like, well, okay, well, what is that? What you can do, in the situation where they are obviously engaging spiritually, then I think you can engage them spiritually, perhaps at another level, to find out, well, what is giving access to this? A court case to say, well, what is the access into the house or to the children? Maybe the way to go.
Yeah,
because they're obviously able to confess the truth and speak the truth. Well, this is just identifying, well, more specifically, well, why? Because you can confess all the scriptures, but if the scriptures are operating, obviously, if there's fear, you can confess all the love scriptures, but you've got to deal with why the fear's there. And if you are operating in fear, you have to renounce the fear. You can't just speak love. Perfect love will cast out fear, but you've got to recognize that it's there and what is causing it to be able to deal with it. So I would encourage you to do a court case with them and just to say, look, here's where we can find out what the accusations are that has allowed this to go on. And then whatever you get, then you then could deal with.
Yeah, and like yesterday, you know, because I was FaceTiming him, and he's growling. She said, "Oh, he was growling all night." And then I listened. I said, "It sounds like he's roaring like a lion." I said, "He's taking his territory." It sounds like, you know,
Yeah.
roar. He's going like I'm going. That
Well,
sounds more like a lion than growling to me.
yeah. Well, again, so well, what do you ask him? What he's doing? What is it that you? Because sometimes it's like they will be able to share something in a simpler way, which can give some insight into it.
Yeah, he's only 2 though, like, you know.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. So how old's the little girl?
She's turning 4.
Okay. Yeah. So those are susceptible ages, you know, because they're not obviously necessarily able to communicate clearly, which is why you've got to go in and find out, you know, because they are responsible and have authority for the home.
Yeah.
And is there anything, because it could be, how long have they lived in the home?
Since it was built, 5 years.
Okay.
But
Okay. So that's a new build.
It's a new build, but I thought there was something on the land because when they first moved in at night, my daughter and my son-in-law actually kind of sees. And
yeah, and sometimes you have to find out what the roots are. Yeah. I mean, I remember talking to a guy, he's an Argentinian guy, and we were talking about stuff that God was doing and whatever. And he said, look, you know, they had a situation where they were in a house and stuff was going on and similar sort of things. And it was getting worse and worse. And they'd done everything they knew what to do. You know, they did all the spiritual warfare they could do, and they did this and whatever. And eventually, God showed them to go into the bathroom and to remove some of the tiles on the bathroom wall. And when they did, they found that in blood, whoever the builder was had written stuff on the wall underneath the tiles. And when they did that, they then dealt with it and scrubbed the whole thing off, and then they counteracted what was said. I can't remember what the words were, but they were obviously negative. They counteracted that then with the truth, and everything stopped. But there was something actually there. Now, it's probably less likely in a new build, but if you can get for revelation of what the roots are, if it's a land issue, okay, well, what legal right is that given then to fear? Was there you know, something happened which was a trauma on the site? Are there lingering human spirits hanging around? You know, because that could be, you know, and therefore, you know, lingering human spirits is I think a more favorable term to alien human spirits. But they're actually, sometimes they're seemingly, these things hang around in particular positions, places. And if you build on that place, are you building on the place where there's trauma, and therefore the night terrors and seeing something can come out, you know? But they do have legal rights once they identify what that is, but using the verdict then to deal with whatever. And then ministering obviously peace and love into the children, and, you know, to bring the opposite spirit into what's been operating. But I think a lot of people try and do the peace and love, and we're just going to quote scriptures and whatever, without actually in dealing with the underlying real root cause and the legal right that has. I'm sure in this situation it's likely to, and you may have inadvertently stirred it up, you know, because you brought into the house stuff which is going to challenge things, you know. That's not your fault, but because at the end of the day you want stuff to come to the light so you can deal with it, you know, ultimately. And sometimes it takes something like that to bring things which are sometimes dormant or sometimes waiting for the right moment, and you've, in a sense, force those things into the light. because they're exposed now, you know. I mean, a little boy doesn't just point at something that says there without there being something there that he's actually engaged in, you know. So yeah, I would encourage maybe do a court case and see what you find in it. Yeah.
So when you were saying about spirits hanging around, are they like humans that don't die and don't want to go?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I mean, you know, people would call them ghosts, obviously, but essentially it is the soul of a person who stays, and sometimes that can be in a family line. I mean, Arthur Burke has done a lot of research and development on ministering to people with alien human spirits, he calls them. People in this country who I know, they're calling them lingering human spirits, but they are identifying that they create within people a duality or a double-mindedness, or that whole, I just don't, something isn't right, and they deal with everything, but this still remains. So in terms of trauma and things like that, sometimes they don't depart, you know. Now, in the past, we would have, well, that's familiar spirits and whatever else, but it seems that it isn't. Arthur Burke evicts them, and the guy in this country preaches the gospel to them. so I favor the latter, of course. You know, but it seems, I mean, I don't have personal experience of that, but I do believe, I believe Arthur Burke's stuff is very well researched, and he wouldn't come out with it and do a whole lot of teaching on it if it didn't have some basis in truth. And he comes out and says, well, you know, scripturally, you know, it's hard, you know, it's difficult to things, but on the other flip side of it, you know, you can see all those that were before the flood were essentially, you know, the souls of people who departed in the flood and hang around, you know, which we call demons, you know, but actually, what are they really? You know, they're not fallen angels, you know. It's whether there was enough humanity in those people to call them human beings. That's probably a point of Nephilim, you know, genetic stuff, that they may not have had a human spirit, but they had a soul. In that sense, I don't know. Some of this stuff is quite a bit out there, and I don't have personal experience of it, but I do know people who have had the ministry, and it has really affected them positively in releasing them from things which they never could really fathom, you know.
My daughter is expecting, and she I gave her I bought Arthur Burke's session on you know, on that about the baby and children and stuff, and yeah. That's the other thing she asked me. She said, I listened to Arthur Burke, and the little boy wouldn't let his sister go to school because every time she left, her angel expanded and got big, and that scared him. Okay. So Arthur Burke actually, you know, got involved, and then once it was explained to the child that it was an angel and that he was fine and his sister could go. So that's why she was asking me, is this bad?
Sure. And, you know, if you go and engage and find out, well, maybe it is that, then you can reassure and, you know, say, hey, you've got a big warrior who's there behind you, and nothing can get you through that. I mean, if that's what it is. If it isn't that, then obviously you want to make sure that whatever it is dealt with. But definitely, you know, these things, seemingly there's a lot of revelation that God is bringing through all sorts of different sources and different ways that seems to be helping people in different ways, you know. And I think some people are calling it different things. You know, I know another ministry which is calling it something else, but it's really the same sort of thing. They're sort of, I don't know, I can't remember the title or the terminology they use, but when I heard this person talking about it, I think, well, that's very similar really to this, but it's just presenting in a different way. And I think God does that. He gives different revelation to people, or similar revelation to people, because others can relate to how that person is going to bring it, and they couldn't necessarily relate to how someone else is going to bring it. So God brings it out in many different ways so that people can get help, you know. And the titles may be different, or the semantics are that, but it's actually the words aren't the issue, it's what's behind it. And I think sometimes there's more behind some of these things than is obvious. And I you know, and the same thing with parts and people being stuck in parts and dissociative and all that stuff. It's just like, well, you know, we see the extreme in, you know, dissociative disorder and satanic ritual abuse type stuff, but actually there's a lot of other milder forms of that which still is brokenness, you know, fragmentation and everything else.
So some of those shows that are on TV, like there was one show that used to be on, they would bring the spirit into the light, because the spirit, sometimes the spirit would be kind of lost, and they would talk to it and take it into the light. They might not be wrong.
No.
You know, because they wander around looking for their mate or looking for a wife or a kid or something, and they would say, okay, it's in the light sort of thing. So maybe there's more to it than meets the eye.
Mike, but what I think, when they're spirits, we're talking about our familiar spirits, maybe because I'm religious, I'm just going back to, we're talking about at the time of the flood, not since the flood. Like, people on earth today, when they die, their spirits going and still are going to heaven, or their spirits still are going to separate, but they're both leaving. We're talking prior, or am I?
No, we're talking about. I mean, I can't say from personal experience, because I haven't had any of this. But what we're saying is that now I don't know whether it's the spirit of the person or the soul of the person. It's still, the soul of a person is still a spiritual thing. You know, it's made of spiritual material. It's not physical. So whether it's the soul of the person that lingers, because when, I mean, Ecclesiastes says that the spirit goes back to God.
Yes.
If you're not a believer, then your spirit goes back to God, and then your soul goes to wherever, you know, fire of God's presence, whatever you want to call it, so that your soul and spirit can be reintegrated again in God. But if it doesn't want to go through some traumatic thing, it seems that can affect other people. That's what the ministry is dealing with. And, you know, the guy in the UK who's dealing with it, I'm not going to say his name because I don't have permission necessarily to say his name, but he then is identifying these spirits, why they're there, and then releasing them by preaching the gospel to them, so they can then respond and go off into becoming the cloud of witnesses and become reintegrated. You know, I think Arthur Burke just sort of sends them out, you know, or gets them out of the person. Well, I don't know what happens to them then. Do they then wander around trying to find someone else, or do they go back into heaven, into the fire of God's presence, and he starts working on them? I don't know, but I know they preach the gospel and they find that those spirits respond. You know, and whether it's a spirit or soul, I don't know really. I don't know enough about it to know, but it seems that they can linger if there is some sort of tie to some trauma or something. Again, I've not listened to all the teaching on it. I think Arthur Burke's done a couple of CD series on it. But it sounds weird, but then, you know, no more weird than all the other stuff that we're finding out that we didn't realize. And it seems that people have tried everything and nothing would deal with this. And then they deal with it and they're better. So whatever it is, and whatever you want to call it, at the end of the day, after people having had the ministry to deal with it, they are different, and they testify to whatever was the symptoms that was going on before are then removed. So they're no longer feeling, well, this, I don't know who I am, or there seems to be this two things in me, you know. Yeah, and some of it is, you know, how they would describe it, I guess, would be all different for each individual people, but that's what seemingly is. You know, they have normal deliverance, they deal with familiar spirits, they deal with, and it's almost like, well, we're now at the wits end. We do not know why this isn't work. What is, you know, and they may feel relief from some of the things that they get deliverance from, but there's still this thing which isn't right. They don't feel right because there's an intruder trying to, in a sense, demonstrate their personality, or, you know, which isn't the person's. So they can feel probably schizophrenic, possibly, or feel double-minded, or feel something's just not right. And having had the ministries to identify and get rid of these things, then they do seem to be saying, no, I feel different. I'm free. I feel free from what I was before. So, you know, at the end of the day, if someone gets free, I'm willing to forgo the semantics or understanding and hear the testimony of them being free. And I'm, you know, fortunately, I don't have to explain it because I'm not mandated to do the ministry in it. So, but I do send people to them. You know, there's a number of people I have sent to, some people actually in Canada that I've sent to, because they do stuff online. They do stuff over the phone or online. So they will minister to people all over. And I have had positive feedback from those who have been ministered to, which to me is always, you know, the proof of the pudding is, has this changed someone's life? You know, whether it was deliverance or whatever, has it changed someone's life? Yes, well, great. Then that's where what I'm looking for. And sometimes it's like, I'm not using that to validate anything, because I can't, because I've got no empirical evidence, and I've not. Generally, I sort of go, if it happened to me, then I can say, you know, yes, this is what it was, and I can confirm this is what it was, but it hasn't happened to me. So I can just sort of say, well, other people have testified to that this has set them free. Yeah. So I'm willing to send people to get help, you know. So, yeah.
Mike, when we talk about benches and ecclesias, I always think what we're trying to do, not only have a relationship with God, but with each other. That's so important. I always kind of try to picture in mind, like the women in gold, where we want a relationship that's so close. And when I think of relationships, I keep thinking, well, that's the relationship of our soul together, kind of getting transparent, working things out. Is there a relationship of the spirit, or is it already there? Our spirits kind of know. And then the second question, just a second part to that, you were talking about during your conference that when you looked at your spirit, it took the shape of a mountain. So I always kind of thought my spirit kind of looked like me. I don't know, but.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. Well, in that, what I was saying is there's a difference between my consciousness, my spiritual consciousness, my spiritual identity, and the construct that houses it. So it's like my mind is not my brain, but my mind is contained within my brain, but is not limited by that, because it can expand, and consciousness can be beyond my brain, but it's housed there. And so it's like the construct of my spirit is like a mountain. So there's the first love gate is in there, and there's a throne in there. There's a place of all the gateways are there. That's not my consciousness. So I can extend the boundaries of my spiritual authority, if you like, to cover, overshadow, create boundaries around my government. And I'm, of course, inviting God's presence to fill me, spirit, soul, and body, and to then outwork through those spheres. So it's almost like It's the container in which my spirit is in, and God is in that container because he comes to live in me. So the kingdom is in me, albeit within the first love area that you need to open and invite him in, you know, because he's knocking on that door, wanting us to have a more intimate relationship. So that's really how I see it, because my spirit is in heaven. So the consciousness of my spirit is in heaven, but actually the place where in me, that is where God resides, is connected to heaven, and because I'm living in dual realms, spiritually, in my soul, everything else. So it's a little bit like, you know, how do you describe how something functions? Well, my spirit is I have authority. Therefore, authority is a sphere of a mountain. So it's a description of how my spirit functions in government, and in love and in relationship and everything else. That, you know, if God lives within Zion on a holy mountain, and is a garden on his holy mountain, and Eden is on his holy mountain, and the Firestones are on his holy mountain, and there are various thrones on his holy mountain, then I'm also going to be a pattern of that. So my spirit and soul are patterned after that. And I think, you know, is it actually a physical mountain? Well, obviously not, you know, but it functions in that. And therefore, when I began to look at it, it was like I saw the function. So it's like form and function, Hebrew, Greek. I'm talking about the Hebrew mentality of my spirit being a mountain, not the Greek mentality that is like Mount Everest or something. You know, so it's actually the Hebrew thing is I function as a being with authority, you know, and God is in the midst of that, and I give him the authority because I give him the seat of rest in government in my life. So the descriptions of, well, is there a literal throne made out of wood or gold? Well, no. But is there a position where I yield the lordship of my life every day to the Father and say, Father me, here's the seat of rest in government. I am trusting you with my life. Yes. So it's sort of using, you know, not trying to be too literal, but saying, well, what does that actually mean rather than what does it look like? You know, because because the Greek things were very much of, well, it's a mountain, therefore it must be made of rock, and it's a big thing that pokes up out of the ground, whatever. Remembering that my spirit is, and my spiritual construct is a spiritual material, not physical material, you know. So in essence, you know, the garden of my heart, well, what is it? Well, it's a place within me that I engage God, and things grow and flourish and memories are stored, and that's what it's like. You know, is it a physical garden? Well, obviously not, you know, but is it a spiritual dynamic or place where all the function of a garden takes place? Yeah, because there's a river flowing there, and it's like a place I can lie down in green pasture, and I can invite the shepherd to come and meet with me, and I can plant things and they grow and they produce fruit and I can eat the fruit. Well, they're all the function, not the form, really. Because what is the fruit? Well, it's my testimony that enables me to re-engage. And it's not actually a literal piece of fruit, but it's representative of that in my soul, because that's what its function is. So the function of the river of life, the function of is Hebrew thinking is the way to look at these things rather than Greek thinking. Otherwise, we get tied up with the detail of the form and miss the function. You know? Yeah.
So would another way of be saying that my mountains are my responsibilities that he's given me.
Yeah.
And the mountain, what we're talking about is the consciousness of that responsibility or those responsibilities. And my consciousness covers that area of responsibility. which forms a mountain, i.e. my family or
Yes.
deeply or
Yeah.
whatever I'm in, my
Yeah.
job.
They're spheres of government that you have authority in, and they are represented by mountains that are the symbol of the government of it, and there's a throne that's where you're seated in authority. So we're seated in heavenly places, and it is like that, yeah. And
So my consciousness would cover that area of responsibility.
yes, yeah, yeah, your spiritual
The
consciousness.
atmosphere around that responsibility, the people or whatever.
Yeah, and if then you are integrated soul and spirit, then your actual physical consciousness is in agreement with the position that you're in, and you function together governmentally in harmony, in wholeness, in oneness, in peace, in unity within yourself. So there's no conflict. Whereas sometimes it's like we know we've got a spiritual position, but our soul is just like, no, I'm not having anything to do with that. Responsibility? No way. You know? Ooh, accountability? No, I'm not going there. Last time I did, I got burnt. So I'm backed off from that. So when you deal with all those hurts, wounds, memories, and everything else, your soul and spirit function together in a seamless way. So my spirit is in the realms of heaven, in multiple realms, and my soul's here within me at this point in time. But I can shift the focus of my soul to be thinking and engaging somewhere else at any point in time. But they're operating completely connected. So whatever's happening in that realm can flow into this realm, and my soul is in agreement with my spirit because I'm actually willingly choosing to accept responsibility and to actually operate in the position that I have. You know, because that's where the tension between soul and spirit creates this problem of dichotomy or division or separation, in which my spirit wants to do something and my soul won't let it because of fear or whatever it might be operating in. The more whole you become, the more it just becomes a seamless expression of me. Because who's me? Is my soul me? Is my spirit me? Well, they're both me. They're just both me from a different perspective, and my spirit was around longer than my soul was around, because my soul only formed when my spirit came into the physical body and I became a living soul. You know, I don't believe in reincarnation, and I don't believe in a pre-existing soul, which a lot of people do. You know, a lot of people seem to believe in some people do, a pre-existing soul. I don't believe my soul formed until my spirit came out of heaven and came into the physical cells that form within my parent, my mum, and then I became a living being, soul and spirit. But of course, I'm born into a world which was not perfected, so my soul and spirit were disconnected. You know, because that's the mindset that we're born into. That's the belief system. That's the death that Adam brought all humanity into. It's that separation. And then God obviously wants me to be restored and made whole. But
Mike,
it is, you know.
Mike, going back to for an ecclesia or an bench, it's relationship. And is the spiritual part already there? And it's just the soul part we're trying to work through? It seems to be that. In other words, all our issues and transparency is of the soul. But
Yeah. Yes, in a sense, our spirit obviously wants us to be in a full agreement with God and with each other, and is at work to facilitate that. But the soul has wounds and issues that keep us from that. And the problem with when you say relationship, you will have 100 different views of what that means. And if you have, because a governmental relationship is a relationship based on trust, openness, transparency, honesty. It doesn't have to be friends. You know, some people, oh, you're talking about friendship relationships. No, I'm not actually. Am I friends? Yes. But does that mean we hang out all together all the time? No. But It's different. And if you say to someone, well, you have to work on your relationship, they'll say, well, you've got to spend a whole load of social time doing all this stuff together, blah, blah. It says, oh, well, sorry, I ain't got time for all that. Relationship here is based in we're committing ourselves to one another. We're submitting ourselves to one another. We're making a choice to trust one another. Yes, we also may need to deal with all the reasons why that might not be functioning, but we're going to choose, because this relationship is based on that we're here to serve this blueprint primarily, and then to release other people. But some people, you know, whenever we have any issues here, it will all come down to people say, well, this is a relationship issue. And we say, well, what do you mean? And they'll say, well, we don't trust each other enough because we haven't spent enough time with one another. So you want us to go out and have coffee and do this, that, and the other, and so then we'll trust each other. That's superficial. You know, it doesn't need to be that way. Although I'm not against people having relationships with people who are friends and whatever, is great, you know, but is that meeting a need in them? Or are there needs for a relationship being met in God? And then we give. You've got to look at why people want relationship. And if they're wanting a relationship to bring them something, then that is not a relationship based in God's kingdom, because God doesn't need anything from us. He wants to give everything to us. So he's not wanting a relationship with us because it's going to massage his ego for being God. He's wanting a relationship with us so he can bless us. And then as we then receive from him, we can bless others to encourage them to receive that from God, not us. But you have codependent relationships in which someone has a need and someone has a need to be needed, and therefore they're a perfect match. You know, but that will be so dysfunctional that it will put up with all sorts of huge abuses, because I'd rather put up with that than not be needed. So there are levels of need that we have within that will drive what we're willing to allow happen. We're going through this. Yeah, we're going through this because it always comes down to this type of thing. What do we really mean by relationship within a bench? You know, and for me, it's the choice to say we are committed to one another. And we're making that choice. And for us, we spent time looking at why we might not trust each other and what was in the way of actual relationship. And we got it all out on the table. And so we got into, well, what are we talking about when we're talking about relationship? You know, why don't you trust me? What have I done so that you feel suspicious about my motives? You know, no, if you're not willing to ask those questions, you ain't got real relationship anyway. But a lot of relationship is, for us, we call it fluffy. And it's that, oh, they're there. Oh, you're going through this terrible situation. And it's like, oh, you know, and most of it is codependent. You know, it's not that we can't have compassion, but what did Jesus do when he had compassion? Well, he helped things change. He didn't say, oh, I'm really sorry for you. Let me help you stay where you are. You know, he was moved. Well, he didn't say, oh, I'm really sorry for you, Mary and Martha, your brothers died, but I'm going to comfort you, and I'm going to be here for you. And if you've got any problems, I'll carry your griefs and your sorrows. He said, no, hey, let's get Lazarus out the grave. You know, let's sort the problem. You know, you don't need to be sorrowing because he's not really going to be there for much longer. So Jesus' response was not sort of quite, I think, what people think of him. He was a nice man. You know, I don't think he was a nice man. I don't think you can describe him as a nice man. Was he loving, a full expression of God's love? Yes, but he spoke the truth in love, and he was very direct. you know, and he didn't wasn't too concerned about upsetting people if he could use that to highlight them the situation they're in that they might not want to be in. It's like, you know, a nice man would have said, oh, to the rich young ruler, well, it's okay. You know, yeah, you don't need to really get rid of everything. It'll be all right. You know, just love me as best you can. And they said, well, actually, no, you got to love me with everything. And actually, that means you give away everything you got to the poor. Well, you're not a very nice man. You've challenged me. You know, you've actually put your finger on the root issue in my life. I'm getting my security from material things. And the issue was, if you're going to carry on doing that, you're not going to get your security from me. Not that everyone has to give away everything that they've got. Because he'll put a finger on something else in my life and something else in your life, because he loves us and he's full with compassion for us. But that compassion moves him to speak the truth in love. And if you're going to have a real strong relationship, you've got to be willing to speak the truth in love. You've got to give each other permission to be honest with each other, and you've got to give each permission to be open and willing, because government will throw stuff up because the enemy wants to destroy unity and relationship in that way. And if he can get you not being one heart and mind and not submitted to one another correctly, then of course the authority is removed. So he's always at work trying to undermine, you know. But in everything, particularly in this situation, when you use the relationship, you have to define it. Define what you mean and explore what you mean by relationship. Because if when someone hears that word, they think one thing, you think something else, then already you got a problem, because expectations are mismatched. And you will expect, well, when I say relationship, we're going to be doing this, and they'll think you're going to be doing something totally different. And people will get disappointed because unrealistic expectations and wrong expectations in relationship will create scenarios where people will have completely different ways of thinking about it. So when we started as Adventure 3, we discussed, well, what is this group going to function like? And for us, it was like, do we need to go and spend a whole load of time eating meals together? Well, if we do, they're going to be purposeful meals, not just sat around talking drivel. I mean, I really don't like talking drivel, you know, with people. If we're going to spend some time together, let's speak let's encourage each other. Let's stir each other up. Let's, you know, and yeah, I can talk sport and I can talk various things with different people on the basis of I am looking to engage them where they are, not on the basis of actually this is deep and meaningful, because actually it's irrelevant really in the long run. But I know, I mean, when I go upstairs here and we've got our day center on, there are people who, you know, I'm looking to relate to, and I will talk to them about things that they're interested in, because I want to create things that I'm interested in them. And, you know, so we'll talk football and talk sport and various things. There's a guy who's in the drop-in, and he also comes to church on Sundays into our meetings. And he's like, he said to me the other day, why don't you ask him something beyond the drivel of sport? Because he knows a lot about all sorts of stuff, but all you're asking him is stuff like this. And it was like, so I said, well, yeah, but that's where they are. You know, you can ask me something because you've heard me talk about stuff, and you know that there's other things which I know are more important than this, but actually I'm willing to relate to them at the level they're at to help them know that I am interested in them, not just I want another notch on my conversion belt, you know. So I will talk to people at a level that I think will help. But if I'm one of, as a bench of 3, that's good. That's beyond that stuff. We should be saying we're here committed to what God's calling us to do, and let's get on with it, you know, and let's deal with everything. but let's be committed to being open and honest. And if we say something that we disagree with or upset, well, let's say, well, I'm not sure what you're saying there. Well, can you explain that? Because I thought you meant this. And they're like, oh, no, I didn't mean that. But if you think, oh, they said that, I'm going to hold that now because I'm going to keep that because I'm not going to trust them now because I don't think they believe the same as I do, you end up with a whole heap of problems. You got to recognize that you'll all see things from different perspectives, and that's why it's supposed to be, because you're all coming with three people's parts of the jigsaw puzzle to get the whole, not just one person who brings the jigsaw puzzle picture and everyone has to fit in with it. That's not how a bench works. But it's not easy, you know.
Okay, to simplify for me, can I restate that then? See if this makes sense. It's like when I'm at work, I have to work with different people to get a task done.
Yeah.
And this, I have a task from God. So on the bench or in the ecclesia, I'm looking at the task, working with them, and the part of relationship I'm concerned about is where it's interfering with getting it done.
Yeah. Yep.
Period. I'm not worried about working out that and being their buddy and any gals, good friend. I just want to get God's task done, and wherever it interferes with that, like at work, I got to deal with that in order to get it completed.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that doesn't mean that we're not loving or we don't care for each other, but this role is about establishing the government to enable God's purpose to be fulfilled in the earth. And that's you know, with God, it's not task orientated, but there are tasks. He loves me whether I do anything or not. So it's not the basis of, well, if you don't do anything, he's not going to love you, but he's called you with a destiny and a purpose, and he obviously wants you to fulfill that. And it is difficult because God's love is unconditional, but we're not going to benefit if we don't fulfill our destiny, because God isn't there saying, oh, I love you. It's just like you can just waste the rest of your life and not do anything. Well, yes, you can. And will I still love you? Yes. Will you find fulfillment, and will you find your identity and who you really are by doing nothing? No. You know, you'll find your relationship and identity in God, but that also is outworked in then being who you are and doing what that leads you into. And I know people will say, oh, that whole thing is very functional. That's not relational at all, because their view of relationship is different. This is a governmental relationship, and we're here to do government. And along the way, yes, if there's something hindering, you've got a problem, or hey, you're struggling, yeah, we'll deal with that because it's going to hinder us doing government. And the love for each other is obviously wanting each of us to be the person that God called us to be. You know, and for some, they might like to do that over a meal. For us, we do it on a Tuesday morning. So generally, some people will say, well, you're not very relational. You don't do this and you don't do that together and do that together. Well, because we don't need to. You don't need to do that to establish something that we've already got. You know? But others don't see it that way because they hear the word relationship and they see it, well, this is friendships in a way that, well, we're just friends and we understand each other and we're there to help each other and whatever. And I'm not against friendships because there's all sorts. There's agape relationships, there's filio relationships, the brotherly relationship. There's different sorts of relationship. Kingdom relationship, you know, it comes for the purpose of establishing the kingdom. And in a bench of three, that's what it's for. You know, for outworking a blueprint on earth as it is in heaven. That's our primary reason for existing as a bench. And of course, there are offshoots of that in the sense of, you know, I'm accountable to them about things that are going on in my life. And I'll say, oh, there's some stuff going on right now. I'm working through this. And if I require help, I know that they'll be there. So I'm genuinely sort of sharing my life with them in an open and honest way, but we don't live in each other's pockets at all. Yeah. But I think, yeah, you're right. There are different types of relationship that function in slightly different ways. And we've got to be careful that we're on the same page.
So in fact, after we're working in government, if there's issues, say, that I have, that the others aren't, like they're seeing, do I become the hindrance, or can they work around me to still accomplish that with me? At work, for example, I do that all the time. If someone's got issues, I might do something with someone else in order to sure it gets done. They're still there. They're working.
Yeah.
Because I can't make that person. So a person that it makes, say, errors from time to time, I have to take control to make sure the task still gets done. Because that's just who they are.
Yeah.
I can't fix them, or they can't fix me.
No. I mean, I think there's a sense where if there are issues in someone's life which preclude them from functioning, then you obviously want that person to be free from whatever issue it is. But God doesn't wait for us to be perfect to use us. He'll use us where we are when we're willing. And so we recognize that we're not all perfect, as a bench. And sometimes we'll share something and we'll share things and we're realizing that, the way we're sharing this is from frustration or whatever. And we'll recognize it, and sometimes I'll pick up some frustration. I say, well, that seems to be a bit coming from frustration, and sometimes they'll say, well, that seems to be coming from this. So we're open with each other in it. And if there's something that, is going on, then we will encourage each other, obviously, to work through that issue. But ultimately, we're there for a purpose in it. And that purpose is to establish God's blueprint and to facilitate that taking place. That's our primary purpose for being in that relationship. And if I was suddenly not to be part of that bench, or I chose to step down from that bench, then I wouldn't have the position of being in that bench anymore. And I wouldn't have the relationship with those two people who are actually staying on as part of that bench. Now, if I'm friends with them, then I would probably still see them in the context of that. If we're still part of the church, I would still relate to them, but I wouldn't be relating in the same way because we're no longer in the same relationship. Because I'm not relating to them as part of the bench anymore, because I'm not in the bench anymore, let's say. So the relationships change depending on what you're doing and what the purpose of the relationship is. I have discipleship relationships with people. So I meet those people every week and we share things which are going on in our lives, and we're sharing things that God's doing, and we're encouraging each other in that. If I was not if they didn't want to be in that relationship anymore, well, then the relationship would change, because I wouldn't be seeing them every week and I wouldn't be discussing with them things that are going on in my life, or they with me. So that relationship would be very different depending on, well, what was the purpose of it? And is there a pure relationship that has no purpose? Well, what would be the purpose of the relationship if there was no purpose? And I think this is where God loves me totally unconditionally, because he created me. He's got all these amazing thoughts about me, but he didn't create me to be inactive. He created me to be partnering with him in everything that he wants us to do in terms of the kingdom. Does relationship start first? Yes, but relationship will always lead to responsibility, because that's the consequence of being involved in a God who is keeping the whole thing going, in one sense, but he wants us to be involved. And he's called us to be involved in that. So my relationship with him, although it's wonderful, isn't sitting around and him giving me warm, fuzzy cuddles all the time. It's for me talking and sharing, and him revealing his heart for me, and him sometimes me going and saying, I help. You know, what am I supposed to do with this? I mean, this morning I went to the throne of grace and I said, okay, I need grace and mercy for this scenario, this situation that's going on. So I sit there and I'm at rest in him, with him. And then all of a sudden it's like, so, well, you need to do some legislation. Okay, well, what sort of legislation do I need to do? Well, you need a law to do that and you haven't got it. Oh, okay, so I better go and get a law then. So I go and I get this piece of legislation. And then I start making declarations and decrees and calling forth things on the basis of that legislation. And now I'm like, I've received the grace and mercy I need. But I didn't just sit there and do nothing. I was inspired to do what I needed to do to see that situation change. Now, was I working at it, striving? No. I was perfectly just resting and waiting for the revelation of what I should do to come. Because I'm just sat there in God, handed it all over to him, and then I get inspired by his heart. So I go and do something, which I'm inspired to do. Now, if he told me not to do anything, then I would basically not do anything. You know, so it's not about trying to do things to make something happen in our own strength. It's actually being in a relationship with him where his joy is our strength and where he gives his peace, and the love that he has for us inspires us to be ourselves, you know. And I think it's such a misunderstood and confusing thing for people when you say the word and there's all these different versions of what people are thinking you're talking about, which means in a bench type environment, you've got to spell it out. You've got to spell out the ground rules. You've got to spell out what your expectations are. You've got to spell out, well, what are we talking about here? Because yes, everything in the kingdom is relational. But that isn't what some people think relational is. And, you know, and we have had our struggles with this here. And there are still some key issues which I think need resolving here around that. Because God loved the world. Well, what did he do? He gave. So real love is about what we can give, not about what we receive. But if people are wanting to receive something to meet a need in them, then they'll be driven by that need. And actually what they're really looking for is someone else to actually meet their need. And people can be highly driven to get other people to meet their needs. You know, and you sort of see this in like abusive relationships. It's like, you know, say the husband is abusing the wife and abusing the wife, but because the wife doesn't really know who she is outside of a relationship, she'll stick in it because, well, if I'm not in this relationship, well, who am I? And I'll even lie and defend my husband and explain away all the things that we've done, because the need for having a relationship outweighs the need for not wanting to be abused. So whatever the primary need is will drive the situation. And that can be highly codependent in situations. And, you know, if you are looking to get a need met in someone else, you won't be honest with them, because you'll be afraid if you're honest with them, they will stop giving you what you need. They'll reject you. And so people don't speak the truth because of fear of being rejected, because they've got a need which they're not finding met in God. It's like in a love relationship with God, he wants to meet all those needs. The need for love, acceptance, affirmation, approval, all the things that he's built into us, he built them in there so he can meet the need. And he could give us the security of relationship, which enables us to be ourselves without having to earn it, prove it, do anything for it, but just be it. I can just be me, but being me has all sorts of stuff that I do. But I don't do them to be me. I do them because I am me. And that's the difference between a relationship flowing from a relationship and looking to do something for a relationship. So it is, yeah, it's a big subject, and I think you'll find all sorts of misunderstandings.
Okay, just let me rephrase that then.
Yeah.
My relationship with God is that he meets my needs.
Yeah.
Okay, so any need I have, financial, whatever on earth, God meets it.
Yeah.
That's my relationship with God. I look to him.
Yeah.
How would you, my relationship with others, so God's meeting my needs, my relationship with others then is like your relationship with your wife, your relationship with your kids.
Well, in that, see, I just need to be me.
Because he meets my needs.
Yeah. So all I have to be I will be the best husband that I can be by being the me that he created me to be. So everything flows out of the relationship with him. That's what will inspire me to be a good husband, not because I want my wife to be a good wife to me. So I'm going to be this to her so she can be this to me.
Or I have in my mindset what a good husband is.
Yeah.
I'm trying to fulfill that.
Yeah.
And
And
isn't going to go there.
no, some of these things are, God meets our need. So then are we supposed to meet other people's needs? No, we're supposed to point them to God. We're not supposed to be God to them. Otherwise, we're the idol, and we're looking to be worshipped. And that's the problem. That's the DIY path. It's like, well, you can be like God. Therefore, you'll look for someone else to be God to you, and you'll be looking to be God to someone else, because that's the codependent type relationship that Adam and Eve fell into, rather than the relationship they had with God before that, in which they were not self-conscious or self-aware apart from God. And as soon as they became self-aware apart from God, then all of a sudden they had to meet all their own needs, because they shut themselves off from the source of life and were now following a source that couldn't produce life. So everything becomes a distortion of what God really intended. And do I want to love people? How's the best way I can love people? Helping them have a relationship with God in which God will love them, not making them dependent on me. So if I'm going to be the best me, I am going to demonstrate my relationship with God to people, because then they'll want that relationship. That's the best thing I can do for everybody, is just to be me in relationship with God, so that they'll want the same sort of relationship with God for themselves. And is a God of comfort? Yes. So when someone is sad, or what will I do? Well, I'll be God in a sense of, I'm going to put my arm around you, but I'm going to introduce you to the comforter, not I am going to comfort you. Because if I'm going to comfort you, then you're going to look to me for comfort. But God is the one who's going to provide the comfort. So let me help you engage God, who's going to comfort you here. See, everything is always pointing people back to God, but actually most of what people do is pointing people to them, because that makes them feel better. So in a sense, like, will you prophesy over me? No, but I'll go and help you engage with God, who will speak to you. Because then you don't need the intermediary of me in the way. So in everything, we should be a catalyst in the reaction to help the person engage God, not there to do it for them or to them.
So Mike, if you had, for example, God meets your needs. So now, Mike, you have a daughter that's grown up, with married, kids, or whatever, but she has a need. There's trouble there. That affects you. You go to God for that need that troubles you to meet her need. In other words, it's actually that it's a flow like that.
Well, I think you want to identify the root of the issue so that you can help that person have that dealt with God. Yeah. And if God tells you to do something and gives you a mandate to do something, then you're doing something as his representative. And we can represent God in situations because, God hasn't got skin on. We're the skin in the game, if you like. He wants to demonstrate
that situation.
Yeah.
Should you be because once that's out of kilter over there, that kind of throws you out of kilter. So should you go to God because you have to come into rest in that?
Oh, totally, yeah.
So you're not unsettled by what's going on over there.
I need to be in peace and rest in everything, and therefore I have to hand every situation over to God.
No matter what.
Yeah, I'm not going to carry the responsibility of a situation that I can never fix or solve. Only God can solve those issues with people. I want to help point people to God, and therefore I might need to do something to help them get to God in it, and therefore I'm going to show compassion, but I don't want them to then be drawing from me to try and get their need met. I want to direct them to the one who can really meet their need and bring them fullness of identity and purpose within their own lives. And it is a fine line in some of these things, because we're all a bit of a mixture, and we may not be totally secure and got all our needs met. So so I always am looking to review, well, why do I do that? Why did I say that? Why did I offer this? But genuinely, yesterday, a guy came yesterday to our gathering yesterday. We're in the grips of snow at the minute. So we've got white stuff on the ground, and it's been on the ground for 2 days. And they came, and there was a few people missing because they were stuck out in the sticks and couldn't get in or whatever. And I've only met this guy once before, ever. And I've seen him a couple of times. We did lie busting training with Jonathan, and they were on the call. And this couple came, and they contacted me last week and said, "Oh, I've just been thinking about you recently." And I thought, "Oh, okay, that's really nice. I don't even really know you, but that's really nice. Oh, it'd be great if we could catch up. We're down in your area. We'd love to if we can come to your Sunday gathering, whatever." So, oh, great, but we got a wedding on Saturday and stuff, and we got grandchildren all weekend looking after them. So it's not likely we're going to get together. So this guy comes, I go up to him and he gives me a hug. Immediately I sense something like good about this guy. The hug was it was like God hugs me. That's what it felt like. It's just like, this guy is hugging me. That guy affirmed me in like 2-3 minutes of conversation. He picked up where I am, things I'm going through, encouraged me in it all. And it felt like he's got no agenda here. I'm not even going to probably see him again, but he's demonstrating something which I see as the heart of God, and God is using him but it's God who's doing it, because he's not doing it for himself. He's not doing it because he's got an agenda. This is love. This is God working in him. And I felt the hug of God, and I felt the words of God in the things he spoke, because he was not looking for me to do anything for him. There was no agenda. When we have no agenda, people can see God, and they can feel God, and they can sense God when we talk to them, when we engage them, when we don't have an agenda that actually is looking for something from them. And that, I think, is when they're meeting God, when they meet us. And I think that's a really healthy thing, because we're not there to point them to anyone else. And everything he said to me was like God was speaking to me. That's what it felt like. And I felt more affirmation from that guy in 2 minutes than I felt from anyone else for years. It was just because it was God, and it was God saying, "Hey, I love you. And actually, I know what you're going through, and I know there's difficult situations and things you're dealing with, but actually, because, we're putting some stuff out there at the minute, obviously on blogs and stuff, which is stirring up quite a lot of contention and stuff, and I'm like, look, okay, I'm not letting that affect me. But Jeremy, he's obviously facing quite a lot of stuff, and he's like, so it was just like, okay. He picked that up, and it was just like, look, don't give up, don't get discouraged. Don't be intimidated by anyone's views. It's like, and it felt like God was saying, what you're doing is what I want you to do. Because sometimes, it gets difficult sometimes, and you get people, who you don't expect sometimes coming out with a whole load of stuff. And you think, oh, do I need to get drawn into this? Am I going to, nah, I'm not, I'm, you know, I don't want to be rude, but I don't want to get into debate over, you know, whether this is true or that's true, you know. And this guy really just, whatever he did, just made me feel I'm in the right place. I'm in the right place with God. Yeah, I'm affirmed in what we're doing. And actually, yeah, it's difficult, but hey, I'm encouraged, you know. And he was able to do that to me without any agenda, you know, no agenda. And that's, I think, when you know genuinely that God's at work through your life, because it's all pointed for him. You know, it says in, I think, is it Matthew 5 or 6, you know, we do our good works towards men so they will glorify God who's in heaven, not glorify us. And we won't even need the glory of the thanks, you know. And if they don't thank us, would it make us feel any different? And that's one of the acid tests. If we don't get affirmation from them because we've done something nice to them, what do we feel? Do we feel disappointed? Do we feel hurt? Do we feel, because if we do, we had an agenda in what we were doing, you know. And I think certain things in this, they do challenge where a lot of people are, you know. So yeah, it's these relational type things are they're a minefield of different views and different expectations and different understanding that can create huge problems when you're not clear at the beginning what you mean. And I think when you're establishing a foundation or an ecclesia, and you've got to be almost like over the top in being clear of explaining what you really mean when you say something, because it will likely be misunderstood and held against you by someone who's reading, they're filtering what you're saying through their own filters of understanding. So you've almost like got to be over the top clear and explaining as much as you possibly can. Say, look, when I say relationship, I'm not talking about this, but I'm talking about this. You know, and then, you know, looking at, well, if God so loved the world, he gave. So what am I going to do if I love the world? Well, I'm going to give myself to it. I'm going to lay my life as a living sacrifice to serve whatever it is that God has called me to do. And I'm going to serve without the need for recognition or affirmation or anything from anybody else. If it comes, then praise God, that's wonderful, and I'll trade it for more of you. But if it doesn't come, I'm not going to be offended, wounded, damaged, because I'm affirmed by God. You know, God gives me affirmation. What anyone else gives me is never going to compare to that. If I don't get my affirmation from God, I'm looking for it somewhere else, you know? So yeah, foundational relationships, make sure you really understand what you mean. Everyone means when you start, which is what we did. We didn't really know that's what we were doing, but we spent 3 or 4 or 5 months, I think, just getting stuff out, talking about the issues and being clear that we knew each other. We knew each other's hearts, that we respected each other's different redemptive gifts, that we respected that when someone brings something, they're not going to bring it like I would bring it, but we totally are mutually submitted to that relationship and to receiving from one another to create this culture of honor. And a culture of honor gives the opportunity to bring things into the light and ask questions to clarify the situation. And when the situation clarifies something which isn't right, it then causes an internal pressure. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be like that. And you're seeing me like that. No, I don't want that. So if there's something causing me to do that, then I want to deal with it. Not that, oh, you're criticizing me and you're telling me I got it all wrong and you're assassinating my character and blah, 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 blah. Because to be open and honest and transparent, you've got to be willing to someone to speak the truth. And if you've got blind self areas, you've got to be willing for someone to show you what's in that blind self area. And sometimes God will use people to do that, not just himself. Because then we're going to humble ourselves and say, I've received from you because I believe you're speaking the truth to me. You know, and I'm willing, even though I might not see that, and everything in me is wanting to be defensive and defend my position, I am not going to be defensive, and I'm going to take what you've said and I'm going to go back to God with it, and I'm going to ask him to show me the truth in it. And that's not easy, because it's easy to be offended and to take an offensive situation or a defensive situation and whatever. And it's just like, no, I've got to make a choice. I've got to choose to say, when you tell me and speak the truth to me, I am going to trust you enough to take that to God, and I'm not going to defend myself against what you're saying. Because I believe that you love me when you're speaking the truth, because you want the best for me. Not that you're trying to get one over on me, put me under, you know, under your control or fear or any of those things that can be manipulated in relationships, but I'm going to trust you. So we discussed those things. Well, what would this look like? You know, we tried to get all this stuff out as much as we possibly could, you know, and then when there were situations arose that I felt, well, I'm not sure in this situation. I'm in the, you know, because sometimes, I mean, I got criticized a bit and some stuff went on and we had a political spirit operating and we had some things that were trying to undermine stuff. And I'm sort of like, I'm in the middle of this. I don't trust myself to make the right decision right now. I'll make the biblical decision, but that's not always the right decision. And so, you know, sometimes it isn't. You know, you may have justification to be able to do something because the Bible gives you that justification, but what's God saying? It's very easy to default on the Bible's, well, you can kick them out because they've done this and this and this. Well, what's God saying? And so in that situation, I said, look, I want you to go and discern what God's saying because I don't think I can. And they came back with a solution and I'm like, oh, praise God, let's do that then. You know, and it worked. It was exactly what we should have done. It dealt with the political spirit, maintained relationship through the situation, and eventually resolved itself. And the resolve that God took the person and took them to another part of the country and gave them a job somewhere else. And when they left, we were able to pray for them. They were able to get up and thank us for all the good things we've done. They never mentioned any of the stuff that they had a problem with, and off they went. You know, and it was like, well, if I had said, well, you've done this, this, and this, biblically, we've got every warrant, if you don't stop doing that, to ask you to, you know, take yourself somewhere else. It would have created the scenario where they don't allow any opposition over there. Anyone who doesn't agree with them, they just get rid of, they kick them out, blah, blah, blah. You know, and it would have been biblically correct, but not the wisest thing to do. You know, and so sometimes you've got to trust each other to, when you aren't always able to make a decision, to trust that they will make that decision so that you come into agreement with it. And there's a number of times that that's happened. You know, and another scenario happened the other day. The other two of our bench, they felt strongly about a situation with a person, and I didn't feel as strongly. So I thought, well, I'm going to go and ask God about this. You know, what should we do in this situation? And God sort of said, well, how would I treat you in this situation? So I thought, oh, I don't know. Well, how would you treat me in this situation? So I spent some time engaging, and I asked God to show me, what should we do? How should we do it? And give me the principles behind it, not just this one situation. Well, what's the principle behind something? So, and I thought, so I had some specific things that God said. So then we came back, we met the following week. And I said, look, I've asked God about this because I was feeling a little bit like I was unsure that what you were saying was the wisest thing. So they said, okay, well, let's step into heaven and see what God says then. So we did, and he affirmed what I had felt, and they both heard God say, and that turned their situation around. And so sometimes it isn't even if two agree and one doesn't, you got to be willing to engage and see, okay, let's go and ask God in that scenario. And we won't do anything unless we're 100% in agreement. You know, so we would have been at an impasse because they thought one thing and I thought the other. But we didn't fall out over it. We just thought, well, if there's this impasse, we better go and make sure that we're actually getting what God's saying together now. And we did. And, you know, and you've got to trust that you will. Because you think, oh, I hope God, we all hear the same thing. Because you're sort of like, I don't know, I'm hoping so. But we found every time that we did. And that people have been able to change their view based on, not that, well, you're telling us we're wrong, but actually, you weren't wrong, but is that actually the way God wants us to deal with this situation? Because the simple thing, or the thing which we think is the wisest thing, sometimes with God is not. And he'll want us to do something which is not actually what we think will be the right thing to do, but he's God. So sometimes we've got to realize, well, all the time, realize he sees the bigger picture. You know? And so when we came then to positions, people being in positions of government, it was like, well, what criteria do we base that on? Their fitness for government, their skill in doing this, or their knowledge, or the call of God? And if God calls them into government, you got to work through their lack of skill, their lack of knowledge, their lack of character, their lack of everything, because God's called them. You know, he called some pretty choice people, didn't he? He went through that in the Bible, where you would have thought, well, I wouldn't have chosen them. You know, well, there's Gideon who's hiding away, scared out of his wits. And there's like, hey, you mighty man of valor, I'm calling you to lead the people out of bondage. And he's just like, well, I would have been looking for the guy who got the sword or whatever, you know, like Samuel and David. Well, who's the eldest? Well, it must be the eldest, because the eldest always gets the birthright and the inheritance. No, it's not him. Well, who's the strongest? No, it's not him. Well, is there anyone else? Well, there's this sort of young lad who's out in the fields with the sheep and whatever. Oh, so what did God say? God does not look at the externals. God looks at the heart. You know, so God looks at someone's destiny and he calls them in accordance to that. You know, and they may not be ready from our perspective, but we've got to be willing to work with them to help them grow and mature and come into it. And that's not the easiest thing. You know, it really isn't, because you're looking at it from a totally different perspective in that whole dynamic, you know. Anyway, ooh, wow, what's the time? 12:30. Ooh, flip. I should have been in another meeting half an hour ago. Oops. So, okay. So I better leave you there, because all the time's shunted forward an hour for me because we're not on daylight saving yet. So everything's a little bit off in terms of timing. So I was like, okay, yes.
This is good, because this is a huge subject for relationship.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
You're right. I've got my head spinning right now.
Well, maybe we might pick it up again next time. But anyway, I better leave it there.
Can you leave us on then? Can you leave us on so we could talk?
I can't, no, because I've got another one I've got to get into.
Oh, no, I meant us guys, just our group.
No, because the meeting, I can only have one meeting at a time.